Hi, welcome back to Finally Revealed. In this episode, I want to talk about the brain-body connection and Alzheimer's. I had the occasion to have a case over many years, several years ago, concerning a woman who died of Alzheimer's, and whether or not she had that condition was relevant to the case. We had an expert witness who was a geriatric neurologist, and so my working with him over the period of time that I was involved in that case is where most of this information comes from. When you deal with experts in cases that are going to go to a jury, it's important that you're able to explain some of the technical terms that the expert is going to use, because that's what they use in their everyday life. However, the rest of us don't use those terms in everyday life, so it's important for the attorney to have the witness help explain, and for the attorney to be able to help the witness explain in more ordinary language so that the rest of us can understand what they're doing. You have to read a lot of books, and you have to get into it and really understand and educate yourself on those areas, whether it's engineering or medical or whatever. So I had to do that, and that's where this information is coming from. So in dealing with the doctor on this case, I had a lot of questions about Alzheimer's because I had not had a personal experience with it before. He was very patient with me, but the things that I asked, I think, are questions that a lot of people might have, and they don't have that opportunity to sit down and ask someone unless you're facing a situation with a loved one. And even then, I think you might be afraid to ask the questions, or they might not come up because you're very busy or preoccupied in dealing with the day-to-day care and all of the things that go with dealing with someone with dementia. Alzheimer's is only one kind of dementia. It is pretty prevalent, at least in the US, in the past couple of decades. It was discovered by Dr. Alois Alzheimer in 1906 after he had a patient, a female patient, who exhibited different types of psychiatric issues and memory problems, and he wanted to find out what was this all about. So he examined her brain after she died, and he found two things that are still markers, physical markers in the brain today that doctors look for. The first one is amyloid plaques, which is abnormal clumping in the brain. When you look at, there's abnormal clumping of cells of the brain. And the other one is tangled bundles of fibers, which is referred to as neurofibrillary or tau tangles. And those are still looked at today as markers for Alzheimer's. There's a third one that they use today also. In addition, today they also look at a loss of nerve cells or neurons in the brain, and when there's a diminished amount of connection. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because that is important to the main question that I had for the doctor that I want to share with you. But this background information, I think, is helpful to kind of get us oriented to the subject. So many people are familiar with talk of Alzheimer's and memory loss, and there's some physical problems and mobility later on, or language problems, and somewhat unpredictable behavior. For the case that I was working on, we had to go through all of the stages, and in dealing with the doctor, he explained that Alzheimer's has 3 distinct stages. He said that they span about a 6-year period. So depending upon when the person is diagnosed and matching up their symptoms on a spectrum, you can match where they are on the spectrum as far as their current symptoms, and then that gives you an idea as to the length of their life and how the symptoms are going to play out. And that brings me to the question that I asked him. I did not understand how people can be said to have died from Alzheimer's. You know, if you have a dementia problem, it's a thinking problem. How can a thinking problem really result in the death of the body. And he was very clear in explaining it to me. Here I've just mentioned the memory problems and the language problems, and those are things that we associate with the brain. But we don't talk about a memory problem as causing someone to die. What he explained and what we know, but I think we don't think about this a lot, the brain controls everything in the body, everything. When you get a cut, your brain sends a message down, hey guys, we need a scab on this cut to stop the bleeding and to repair the skin, and it happens. If you get a fingernail pulled back, it grows back. Your hair grows back. When you get a sinus infection, you have a lot of mucus that comes in. You have a white cell count to combat infections in the body. The body is an incredible healing machine. It can take care of itself in a large part. But the brain is where the orders come from. And if the brain gets sick, it can't receive the orders, and it can't send out the orders, and it can't send out the right orders. And a light bulb went off when he told me this. And that's where you get to the connections of the neurons. The neurons, or the nerve cells in the brain, connect the impulses back and forth through the brain, also from the brain to the body and the different parts of the body. So think of it as the messenger system. The messages are not getting through. Maybe you think of it as bad email. Your email system is down. Well, over a period of time, it slows down as those connections are lost, as these clumps and the physical changes and other things are taking place as the disease progresses in the brain. The messages that are getting out are coming out, but they might be delayed. Then they might not come at all. They might only go to certain parts and not to other parts of the brain or the body. And at a major point of contention in the case that I had was this one side wanted to say that this wasn't Alzheimer's, that this person had some other physical issues that were not related to Alzheimer's. And we were able to explain to the jury that this is what I've just told to you is how it works. That it is not just the brain by itself, and you say, well, we have lungs and heart and everything else can keep going. The brain is in charge. And when the brain is dying and these messages are not getting through, it might ordinarily be a minor health issue, all of a sudden causes someone's death because they get pneumonia, they can't recover. The end stage symptoms, which happens repeatedly, is a bladder infection. And the brain is not able to send help to get this remedied, and the infection spreads and the body dies. So, and there are other ones, that's just one example. So I thought that was really helpful information for me to know. I needed to know it in order to explain it, obviously, in that case, but I didn't have that awareness of how that all fit together. I asked him, what is something that we can do to help us not have this happen to us? And he said, eat blueberries. It is the best thing to combat this that there is. And I looked that up separately also, and the recommended amount is a cup a day. It's because they have anthocyanin. Blackberries and raspberries and cherries also have anthocyanin, and it is a compound that stops the progression of the brain damage, and the brain damage affected by the free radicals, which are what attack the brain and cause this to happen. There have been studies on consumption of blueberries, and they directly showed that the consumption improved memory. So we can all benefit from an improved memory, and so that's something that's easy to do. Organic would be best, not have the chemicals on it. But anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. It was something that I had to ask for that purpose, but I don't see this ever shown anywhere, and I wanted to share it with you. So if it was helpful, if you learned something, give me a thumbs up. Share it with someone who it might help them understand if they're going through a situation. Leave any comments or questions below. Subscribe to see the other videos, and please come back and see me next time. Thanks for watching.